There have been few figures in the history of professional wrestling who made an impact like Chyna. Born as Joni Laura, she transformed into the ninth wonder of the world, an athlete that would shatter expectations and redefine what was possible for women in the world of sports entertainment. Not only did Chyna compete in the industry, but she changed it forever, establishing a legacy that we can still see today. While Chyna's life may have ended in tragedy, today we're taking a look at her extraordinary achievements in the business. In this video, we're exploring 10 pivotal moments in Chyna's legendary career which saw her transition from an outsider to an icon in the world of professional wrestling. Chyna experienced a turbulent childhood that was marked by turmoil and relocation, but despite her tumultuous upbringing, Chyna found an escape in the world of fitness where she developed a strong physique that would later serve her well in her wrestling career. She held a bunch of different jobs, from a cocktail waitress to a singer in a band, but she struggled to find her true calling in life. In her late 20s, she began entering fitness competitions, and her exceptional size often set her apart from the other female competitors. Unfortunately, Chyna struggled to win at those competitions due to the judges favouring less muscular women. One night, she was frustrated and unable to sleep when she happened across a WWF TV show. She'd never seen wrestling before, but she was captivated by the athleticism and the over-the-top drama and presentation. She knew that she wanted to get involved in the world of wrestling from the moment that she saw it, and she decided to start training. Chyna embarked on a wrestling journey under the guidance of Killer Kowalski, the same man who had also trained Triple H. Chyna crossed paths with Triple H and Shawn Michaels after a WWF show in 1996, and they were so impressed with her they convinced Vince McMahon to sign her to become the bodyguard for D-Generation X. In a later interview, Triple H confessed that convincing McMahon of Chyna's potential as their bodyguard was a real challenge. He simply didn't believe the fans would buy a woman in that role, and it could have been a hell of a lot different too. At the same time, Eric Bischoff in WCW put an offer on the table for her to join them instead, and if she was to have accepted that offer, she would have ended up in the New World Order. But in the end, Vince McMahon came round to the idea and signed her up to a contract himself. And so, in February 1997, Chyna intervened in a match between Triple H and Goldust. Jim Ross was on commentary at the time, and he famously exclaimed, during these early months as the enforcer for DX, Chyna stood alongside the men, imposing and almost frightening in her demeanour. Her powerful presence needed no words. In January 1999, Chyna broke new ground as the first woman to ever enter a Royal Rumble match. She entered at number 30 and was eliminated after 35 seconds by Stone Cold, but she did manage to eliminate Mark Henry along the way. It was an astounding moment to see Chyna in a Royal Rumble match, but more interesting is how she got into that match in the first place. At the time, DX were feuding with the Corporation in the run-up to the 1999 Rumble, and so 10 men competed in a scaled down version of the match to determine who would enter at number 30. I say men, it was actually 9 men and 1 woman. The Corporate Rumble saw Ken Shamrock, Billy Gunn, the Big Boss Man, Test, X-Pac, the Road Dogg, Kane, Triple H, Vince McMahon, and of course Chyna face off. At the end of the match, McMahon thought he'd won, but he didn't bank on Chyna getting involved. She absolutely destroyed Pat Patterson and Jerry Briscoe, who was standing guard at ringside, before getting in the ring herself and eliminating Mr. McMahon to win the match. In 1999, Chyna stepped into another territory that no woman had ever ventured into before, the men's King of the Ring tournament. she broke through the gender barrier in her first round match against Val Venus, which saw her claim victory in just 2 minutes and 14 seconds, advancing to the second round. Vince McMahon's previously held views about Chyna quickly changed. This woman, who he once hesitated to sign up and place front and centre in front of DX, was now beating men in the middle of the ring. Interestingly, during this match, Nicole Bass, who was another female bodybuilder that the WWF had hired in 1999, tried to interfere in the match. Chyna made quick work of her at ringside. The parallel between Chyna and Nicole Bass is quite interesting because Bass quickly faded into the background, while Chyna's impact can still be felt on wrestling to this very day. In August of 1999, it was time for Chyna to ascend to a peak that no woman in pro wrestling had ever reached before. There was a match on Raw that was supposed to take place between Steve Austin, Triple H and The Undertaker, but when Austin was thrown down a flight of stairs backstage, Commissioner Shawn Michaels made the decision to book a Falls Count Anywhere #1 Contenders triple threat match in its place. The winner of the #1 Contenders match was to go on to SummerSlam to wrestle Austin for the WWF Championship. Triple H didn't bank on Chyna being announced as the new participant in the match. They were still an on-screen item at the time, but Chyna didn't take kindly to Triple H calling her just a woman. During the match, Austin interfered. He smashed Triple H over the head with a chair, allowing Chyna to get the win. Sadly, Chyna was #1 contender for only a week, as she would lose it to Mankind on the following episode of Raw, but she looked really strong by becoming the #1 contender in the first place. At the end of 1999, Chyna found herself on a collision course with Jeff Jarrett over the Intercontinental Championship. Jarrett was adamant that a woman's place was in the home, more specifically in the kitchen, and so at No Mercy, Chyna faced Jarrett in the one and only Good Housekeeping match, a match that she won and made history in the process. Chyna won the Intercontinental title that night and she broke down barriers. She became the first woman to ever hold the IC title. In March 2000, Eddie Guerrero started to develop a thing for Chyna, affectionately referring to her as his Mamacita. After a little bit of initial resistance, Chyna and Eddie Guerrero became an item. The new couple managed to capture the fans' hearts, but cracks soon began to show in their partnership. A notable point of conflict came during the King of the Ring tournament, when the couple faced off against each other to advance. Chyna was upset at Guerrero pinning her to move on to the next round. Later at SummerSlam, they faced off against Trish Stratus and Val Venus in an intergender tag team match where the winning pair would take the Intercontinental Championship. Chyna pinned Stratus and became a two-time Intercontinental Champion. Tensions between Eddie and Chyna continued to mount when he unintentionally pinned her during a title match, leading to him winning the IC title from her. Chyna started to grow uneasy that Guerrero was cheating to retain his title, and Guerrero grew jealous of Chyna's Playboy shoot. Guerrero ended up proposing to Chyna just as their relationship seemed to be in trouble, and miraculously she accepted. However, the engagement was cut short when Guerrero was caught showering with two other women. But this relationship is still remembered fondly by fans, and for some people it's what comes to mind first when they think of both Chyna and Eddie. There was a time between 1999 and 2001 where Chyna crossed over into the mainstream. She appeared on the front covers of magazines and made guest appearances on TV shows. Chyna became a spokesperson for the WWF too. This strong, proud woman did wonders for the WWF's marketing department. Her appearances on the likes of Third Rock from the Sun and Pacific Blue gained her fans outside of wrestling too. And of course, who can forget her appearances in the pages of Playboy magazine, where she appeared as the cover star on two separate occasions. Chyna's decision to pose nude for Playboy in November 2000 became an integral part of a WWF storyline. This move agitated the Right to Censor, who were a group of morally conservative wrestlers, and brought her into conflict with their leader, Ivory, who was also then women's champion. The rivalry between Chyna and Ivory peaked at the Royal Rumble in a match where Chyna seemed to re-injure her neck while executing a handspring back elbow. Upon Chyna's return from her injury, she faced Ivory at WrestleMania 17, winning the Women's Championship from her in a match that was quick and decisive. Chyna's reign as the Women's Champion brought a level of prestige to the title that had never been seen before. She successfully defended a title against Lita at Judgment Day in 2001, but not long after that, she vacated the title, marking her final WWF match and closing a monumental chapter in her career. After the WWF, Chyna ventured to Japan and made appearances for New Japan Pro Wrestling. The bosses in New Japan were extremely generous to Chyna, booking her in matches against men, and the Japanese fans absolutely adored her. Famously, she wrestled Japanese legend Masahiro Chono in a very close match. Chyna would later say that the match against Chono was one of her greatest in-ring achievements, and Chono still speaks really fondly of her until this very day. Like her American wrestling career, Chyna shone brightly in Japan but burned out all too soon. As her real-life personal problems started to catch up with her, Chyna's in-ring career came to a close. Even though her journey through life was cut short, her impact will forever resonate amongst wrestling fans.